He thought it was just a horse, standing there, silent, staring straight at him from the edge of the woods. But then it turned, and started walking away. Slowly, as if it wanted him to follow. Something felt off. The forest was too quiet. No birds. No wind. Just the sound of his footsteps, and the horse leading him deeper and deeper inside. He should have turned back. Every instinct told him to stop. But curiosity pulled him forward. And then, the horse suddenly stopped. What he saw next wasn't supposed to be there. And in that moment, he realized this wasn't just a horse. This was something else entirely. The sun was beginning to lower behind the hills when Daniel first noticed the horse. He had walked this path many times before. It ran along the edge of a quiet stretch of forest just outside his town, a place where people came for fresh air and a break from noise. Nothing unusual ever happened here. That was why he liked it. But today felt different. The horse stood just beyond the line of trees, where the light started to fade into shadow. Its coat was dark, almost blending into the forest behind it. At first, Daniel thought it might belong to someone nearby. Maybe it had wandered off. It was not strange to see animals out here. What was strange was the way it stood. Still. Silent. Watching him. Daniel slowed his steps. He looked around, expecting to see a fence or a nearby field. There was nothing. Just trees stretching deep into the distance. "Hey!" he called out, his voice calm but unsure. "Where did you come from?" The horse did not react right away. It did not move closer or step away. It only kept its eyes on him, steady and unblinking. A light breeze passed through the trees, brushing against Daniel's jacket. He suddenly became aware of how quiet everything was. The usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves seemed to have faded. He took a few steps closer. The horse shifted slightly, then turned its head toward the forest. For a moment, it stood like that, as if listening to something far away. Then it began to walk. Slowly, it moved between the trees, its steps quiet but clear against the ground. After a few paces, it stopped and looked back at him. Daniel felt a strange pull in his chest. It was not fear, not exactly. It was something closer to curiosity, mixed with a feeling he could not name. "Just go back," he muttered to himself. "It is not your problem." But his feet did not listen. The horse waited, its gaze steady, almost patient. Daniel glanced behind him. The path was still there, open and familiar. The way back was easy. Safe. Ahead, the forest stood thick and shadowed, the light fading as the sun dropped lower. He hesitated. Then he took another step forward. The ground beneath his shoes changed as he crossed into the trees. The air felt cooler here. The smell of earth and leaves grew stronger. The horse continued walking, deeper now, moving at a pace that kept just enough distance between them. Every so often, it looked back again, making sure he followed. "All right," Daniel said quietly, almost as if answering a question. "Just for a minute." Minutes passed, though it felt longer. The deeper he went, the more the world behind him seemed to fade. The path was gone. The sounds of the outside world were gone. Even the light had begun to thin, turning the space between the trees into shifting shades of gray. Daniel's heartbeat picked up. "This is far enough," he said under his breath. But the horse did not stop. It kept moving forward, calm and certain, as if it knew exactly where it was going. And somehow, without fully understanding why, Daniel kept following. The forest grew denser with every step Daniel took. At first, he could still see small patches of light between the branches, but those quickly faded as the trees closed in around him. The ground became uneven, covered with roots and fallen leaves that softened the sound of his footsteps. The horse moved ahead at the same steady pace, never rushing, never stopping for long. It seemed to know exactly where to go. Daniel glanced behind him. There was no clear path anymore. What had once been an open trail was now just a wall of trees and shadows. For a moment, he tried to remember the way back, but every direction looked the same. "Okay, this is not good," he whispered. He reached for his phone and checked the screen. No signal. Just a blank set of bars and a fading battery icon. A faint unease settled in his chest. He looked up again. The horse had stopped. It stood a short distance ahead, its head slightly turned toward him. Waiting. Are you serious? Daniel muttered. You are really doing this right now? The horse gave a soft movement of its head, then turned and continued forward. Daniel exhaled slowly. He knew he should turn back. Anyone would. There was nothing normal about this situation. No clear reason to keep going. But something held him there. A quiet thought pushed through his doubt. If the horse belonged to someone, it might lead him to help. Maybe there was a farm deeper in the forest. Maybe someone was looking for it. That was enough to keep him moving. The air felt cooler now. He rubbed his hands together, trying to shake off the growing chill. The silence pressed in around him, thick and heavy. No birds called. No branches cracked. Only the faint sound of hooves ahead of him. Then, without warning, the horse stopped again. This time, it did not move. Daniel slowed his steps, his eyes scanning the space ahead. At first, he saw nothing but trees and shadow. Then, slowly, something took shape in the distance. A structure. Old. Faded. Almost hidden behind layers of overgrown branches. His breath caught. "What is that?" he said softly. He stepped closer, pushing past low-hanging limbs. The outline became clearer. It was a cabin. The wood looked worn and dark, as if it had been left untouched for years. One side leaned slightly, and the windows were broken, their empty frames staring out into the forest. Daniel felt a sudden tension in his chest. This place should not have been here. He had walked near this forest many times. He had never seen anything like it before. He turned to look at the horse. But it had not followed him this time. It stood farther back, just beyond the trees, watching him in silence. Waiting. Daniel stood still for a moment, staring at the cabin. Up close, it looked even more unsettling. The wood was cracked and darkened with age, and parts of the roof had sunk inward. The windows were broken, their jagged edges catching what little light filtered through the trees. It felt like a place that had been forgotten for a very long time. And yet, something about it did not feel empty. Daniel took a slow step forward. The ground near the cabin was disturbed. Leaves were pressed down, and the dirt beneath showed marks that had not been there for long. He crouched slightly and looked closer. Footprints. Not old ones. Not faded. Fresh. A chill ran through him. Someone had been here. Recently. He straightened and glanced back toward the horse. It had not moved. It stood at a distance, half hidden by the trees, its gaze fixed on him. "You brought me here," Daniel said under his breath, though he did not expect an answer. The cabin door hung slightly open. It moved just enough to make a soft sound as the air shifted. Daniel approached it carefully. Each step felt heavier than the last. His hand lifted slowly, and he pushed the door. It creaked as it opened wider. Inside, the air felt colder. Dust floated in the dim light that slipped through the broken windows. The room was bare except for a few scattered pieces of old furniture. A chair lay on its side. A table stood crooked, one leg shorter than the others. Everything looked abandoned, but not untouched. Daniel stepped inside, his eyes scanning every corner. The floor was marked with more footprints, some leading deeper into the cabin. He swallowed and took another step. "Hello," he called out. His voice sounded strange in the quiet space, as if it did not belong there. No answer. He waited, listening. At first, there was nothing. Then, very faintly, he heard something. A sound that did not fit. Daniel turned his head slightly, trying to catch it again. There it was. A soft noise, almost like a whisper. Or a weak voice. It came from somewhere deeper inside. His heartbeat quickened. "Is someone there?" he asked, louder this time. Still no clear response. The sound came again, barely there, like it was fading in and out. Daniel moved toward the back of the cabin, following it. Each step made the wooden floor creak under his weight. The air grew colder as he went, and the light dimmer. In the far corner, something caught his attention. A section of the floor looked different. He stepped closer and saw it clearly. A wooden panel, slightly raised. A trapdoor. It was not fully closed. One edge was lifted just enough to show a thin line of darkness beneath. The faint sound was coming from below. Daniel stood over it, his breath unsteady. For a moment, he hesitated. Every part of him warned him to leave, to walk away and get help. But the sound came again. Weak. Desperate. He reached down slowly and gripped the edge of the panel. The wood felt cold against his hand. With a deep breath, he pulled it open. Darkness spread beneath him, thick and heavy. Then, from below, a voice. Soft. Fragile. Help. Daniel froze, his heart pounding in his chest. Someone was down there. Daniel's hand tightened around the edge of the trapdoor as the word echoed up from the darkness. Help. For a moment, he could not move. His thoughts rushed in all directions at once. This was no longer a strange walk through the woods or a curious discovery. Someone was down there. Someone alive. Hold on, he said quickly, his voice unsteady. I am coming. He looked around for anything he could use, but there was nothing except the broken furniture and scattered debris. The only way down was through the opening itself. Daniel lowered himself carefully, feeling with his foot until it found a wooden rung beneath the floor. A ladder. Old, but still holding. He descended slowly, gripping the sides tightly. The air grew colder with each step, and the light from above faded until only a dim glow remained. When his feet touched the ground, he paused. It was a small underground space, barely large enough to stand upright. The walls were rough and damp. The smell of earth filled the air. "Hello," he called softly. A faint movement came from the far corner. Daniel turned and saw her. A young girl, curled against the wall. Her clothes were dirty, her face pale, and her eyes wide with fear. She flinched at the sound of his voice, as if expecting something worse. "It is okay," Daniel said gently, raising his hand slightly. "I am not going to hurt you." She said nothing at first. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. He took a small step closer, careful not to startle her. "You are safe now," he continued. "I am going to get you out of here." The girl looked at him, searching his face, as if trying to decide whether to believe him. After a moment, she gave a weak nod. Daniel crouched beside her. "Can you stand?" She tried, but her legs shook beneath her. He quickly reached out and supported her, helping her to her feet. "It is okay," he said. "Take it slow." She leaned against him, her strength almost gone. Daniel could feel how light she was, how long she must have been down there. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly. Her eyes filled with fear again. She opened her mouth to answer, but before she could speak, a sound came from above. A heavy step. Then another. Daniel froze. Someone was in the cabin. The girl's grip tightened on his arm. Her breathing became quick and shallow. "They came back," she whispered. A sharp creak echoed from above, followed by the slow sound of movement across the wooden floor. Daniel's mind raced. There was no time to think, no time to plan. He looked up at the ladder. "We have to go. Now," he said under his breath. He guided the girl toward it, helping her place her foot on the first rung. "Climb," he urged softly. "I am right behind you." She moved as quickly as she could, though her strength was fading. Daniel stayed close, ready to catch her if she slipped. The sounds above grew louder. Footsteps moved across the cabin, slow and deliberate. The trapdoor shifted slightly. Daniel's heart pounded. "Keep going," he whispered. The girl reached the top and pulled herself onto the floor. Daniel followed, pushing himself up and out of the dark space. As soon as he stood, he grabbed the edge of the trapdoor and lowered it quietly back into place. The cabin was no longer silent. The footsteps had stopped. Whoever was there knew something was wrong. Daniel glanced toward the front of the cabin. The door stood open, letting in a thin line of fading light. The girl clutched his sleeve, her fear clear. "We cannot go that way," she whispered. Daniel scanned the room quickly, his eyes landing on a broken section of wall near the back. Part of it had collapsed, leaving a narrow opening just wide enough to squeeze through. It was their only chance. "Stay close to me," he said. Another step sounded from the front of the cabin. Closer this time. Daniel took a breath, then guided the girl toward the opening. They had seconds left. Daniel pushed aside a loose plank and guided the girl through the narrow opening at the back of the cabin. The wood scraped against his shoulder as he followed her out. Cool air rushed over them, carrying the damp scent of the forest. "Come on," he whispered. They moved quickly, stepping over roots and low branches. The girl struggled to keep up, her steps uneven, but she did not let go of his hand. Behind them, a sharp noise broke the silence. The cabin door slammed. Then came the sound of hurried footsteps. "They are coming," the girl said, her voice shaking. Daniel did not look back. "Just keep moving." The forest felt tighter now, as if the trees themselves were closing in. Shadows stretched across the ground, and the fading light made it harder to see where they were going. A branch snapped somewhere behind them. Closer. Daniel's breath grew heavier, but he pushed forward, pulling the girl along with him. "We are almost out," he said, though he was not sure if it was true. The ground began to slope slightly, and the trees ahead looked thinner. A faint glow appeared through the branches. Hope. They ran toward it. Another sound came from behind them, louder this time. Whoever was chasing them was gaining ground. "Faster," Daniel urged. The girl nodded, gathering what little strength she had left. They broke through the last line of trees and stumbled onto open ground. The road. Daniel almost could not believe it. The familiar stretch of gravel lay just ahead, quiet and empty. He helped the girl across, both of them breathing hard. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel looked up. The horse stood on the other side of the road. Still. Silent. Watching. It had been waiting. The noise from the forest stopped at the edge of the trees. No one stepped out. No figure appeared. It was as if whatever had chased them could not leave the shadows behind. Daniel turned back toward the horse. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Something passed between them that he could not explain. A quiet understanding. A strange sense of purpose fulfilled. "Thank you," he said softly. The horse gave a small movement of its head, then turned away. It walked toward the trees on the opposite side of the road, its form slowly fading into the dim light. Within seconds, it was gone. The forest fell silent again. Later, when help arrived and the girl was taken to safety, Daniel tried to explain what had happened. He told them about the cabin, the trapdoor, the path he had followed. But when people went back to search the area, they found nothing. No cabin. No footprints. No sign that anyone had ever been there. Just an empty stretch of forest, quiet and unchanged. Daniel stood at the edge of the trees one last time, looking into the shadows where it had all begun. The road behind him was real. The girl was safe. But the question stayed with him. If the place was gone, then what had led him there? And why had it chosen him? He never saw the horse again. But sometimes, in the stillness of evening, he felt as though something out there was still watching. Waiting. And just like that, the mystery was over. A horse that appeared from nowhere. A cabin that no one could find again. And a life that was saved in the most unexpected way. Some questions were answered. But others may never be. So what do you think? Was it just a strange coincidence, or something far beyond explanation? If this story gave you chills, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more stories that stay with you long after they end. Share this with someone who loves mysterious stories. And let me know in the comments what would you have done if you were in Daniel's place?